Radiation levels at one of Fukushima's nuclear power stations is at its highest level since the tsunami-triggered meltdown nearly 6 years ago. Tokyo Electric Power, or TEPCO, is reporting that atmospheric readings inside Daiichi's reactor number 2 are as high as 530 sieverts an hour. To put that in perspective for you, a human that is exposed to a single dose of 10 sieverts would die in a couple of weeks. The levels being recorded here are 53 times that. TEPCO says it's possible melted fuel has leaked through the pressure vessel. The discovery is going to seriously challenge the efforts to safely dismantle this plant. Can you explain what's likely going on here?
Well, you know, this catastrophe that's ongoing is nearly 6 years old at this point, and the fuel, the melted cores, have been missing in action. Tokyo Electric doesn't know where they are. The Japanese government doesn't know where they are. Nobody knows where they are. They may even have come upon melted fuel that's not underwater, and water serves as a radiation shielding. So if this is an open air area and there's no water, that could explain. But what you've got are melted reactor cores. And of course, human beings can't be in operating atomic reactors. They also can't be in this area where there's a meltdown. And there's also imagery. It looks like a melt through of a metal grate. And so it all stands to reason that the cores melted through the reactor pressure vessels and down into the containment structures, right through that metal grating. It's indisputable that there's a daily flow of radioactively contaminated groundwater into the ocean, because every day they pour 100 tons of water on each of these 3 melted down cores. And sometimes they lose those tanks. They leak, they overflow, so it's an ongoing catastrophe. They don't have all of that spent nuclear fuel transferred to a safer location in a couple of the units still. So if something were to go wrong with that, those would be open air releases of very high level radioactivity. That's the situation deep in there. They're already saying it'll take 40 years to so-called decommission this, but that may be optimistic.
un scénario catastrophe. Une partie de la Terre privée d'électricité. Des grandes villes qui s'éteignent. Une panne d'électricité majeure comme celle que nous venons d'imaginer s'est déjà produite. C'était le 15 mars 1989 au Canada, plongeant 10 millions d'habitants dans le noir.
Bonsoir. Tout le Québec s'est retrouvé une fois de plus complètement privé d'électricité la nuit dernière.
Ce matin, les Québécois se sont levés par une très belle journée d'hiver, mais depuis quelques heures, leur réseau d'électricité était en panne.
Après de multiples recherches, les scientifiques ont fait le lien entre cette gigantesque panne d'électricité et une grosse tempête qui s'était formée à la surface du Soleil. Ces bourrasques de vent solaire ont envoyé sur Terre des particules électriques qui se sont propagées dans le sol et dont la force a fait disjoncter les réseaux d'électricité, provoquant ainsi la panne générale. Qu'arriverait-il si une telle tempête solaire se produisait aujourd'hui? Tous les réseaux de communication très sensibles au rayonnement électromagnétique du Soleil pourraient être touchés de plein fouet. Panne d'électricité, panne des satellites qui entraînerait celle des GPS, des téléphones mobiles et du fonctionnement de nos sociétés fondées sur tous ces outils. Pour la première fois en 2009, un rapport de l'Académie des sciences américaines et de la NASA a estimé qu'une seule tempête solaire de grande ampleur pourrait anéantir l'économie des États-Unis pendant une dizaine d'années, avec un coût estimé à 6 millions de dollars.
Quand il y a une éruption, cette matière donc part dans l'espace et va donc aller se voyager à travers tout le système solaire. C'est ce qu'on appelle la météorologie de l'espace, la météorologie spatiale. Donc nous, ce qui nous intéresse en tant que chercheurs, c'est de comprendre la propagation de ces nuages magnétiques et comment ils vont venir impacter les planètes.
Toute petite face au Soleil, la Terre est sans cesse baignée dans un flux constant de particules électriques venant du Soleil. Ce vent solaire met 2 jours dans des conditions normales pour arriver jusqu'à nous. Il est alors dévié vers les pôles par le champ magnétique qui entoure la Terre. Quand les particules électriques solaires entrent en contact avec des atomes de la haute atmosphère, il se produit une réaction lumineuse. C'est ainsi que se forment les aurores boréales, qui sont la manifestation la plus visible de l'activité solaire sur Terre. C'est pourtant au cours d'un cycle de faible activité que s'est produite la plus grosse tempête solaire jamais enregistrée sur Terre. Il s'agit de l'événement de Carrington. Le 1er septembre 1859, l'astronome anglais Richard Carrington remarqua de très grosses taches solaires dont il fit des croquis. La nuit suivante, des aurores boréales étaient visibles jusqu'aux Caraïbes d'une lumière si intense que des témoignages rapportent qu'il était possible de lire le journal en pleine nuit. Puis les courants électriques se sont propagés dans le sol, provoquant des incendies de télégraphes, et de nombreux télégraphistes ont été victimes de décharges électriques. Si cet événement se produisait aujourd'hui, il aurait des conséquences incalculables.
À l'apparition d'une éruption, il faut prévoir si elle aura ou non un effet sur la Terre. Pour ce faire, nous surveillons constamment les éruptions. Même quand nous sommes sûrs que les éjections vont atteindre la Terre, il s'agit de déterminer leur importance par rapport à d'autres déjà survenus. Nous pouvons simplement dire « un événement important arrive, voici l'heure d'arrivée prévue et nous pensons qu'il existe une probabilité qu'il va provoquer un orage géomagnétique sur Terre, mais nous ne pouvons pas encore le quantifier. »
La Terre est habituée depuis toujours aux tempêtes solaires. Elles ne sont pas plus importantes aujourd'hui, mais leurs conséquences le sont dans l'univers technologique que l'homme a construit. Un univers très fragile. Le 23 juillet 2012, les images des satellites ont montré la violence d'une éruption solaire. Ces images ont permis aux scientifiques de conclure que cette tempête était encore plus forte que celle de Carrington en 1859. Si cette tempête solaire avait frappé la Terre, notre univers en aurait été complètement chamboulé. Heureusement pour nous, elle s'est dispersée dans une direction opposée à notre planète.
Pour des événements de l'ordre de 100 fois l'événement de Carrington, c'est à peu près tous les 800 ans. Et pour un événement qui serait 10 000 fois celui de Carrington, ça serait tous les 5000 ans. Donc on voit que la probabilité sur même le temps de la civilisation humaine n'est pas du tout négligeable d'avoir un phénomène de super éruption qui serait dévastatrice pour notre société technologique.
On November 8th of last year, the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi made a dramatic live televised address to the Indian nation in which he announced that as of 12 midnight that very evening, the 500 and 1,000 rupee notes, the most common notes by value in the Indian economy, would no longer be legal tender. The real question for us today is why? So at least one of the main reasons for this demonetization is giving a boost to the underutilized cashless payment infrastructure of the Indian economy.
When we started, we were about 150 million users, and now we are 160 million users in less than 3 weeks. So 10 million customers got signed up in less than 3 weeks.
All right, so evidently the cashless payment systems of India are getting a big boost as a result, a direct result of this demonetization. And so here's the real billion rupee question. Well, who is behind this? For the first clue on that trail, who is behind this, just follow Bill Gates. He just happened to be in India this week addressing Prime Minister Modi and his cabinet and praising this chance to embrace this wonderful fintech revolution and all of these new cashless payment technologies that India is going to use to leapfrog right over the whole card payment thing and right into the cashless society. But can we find a more direct causal connection, not just a coincidental meeting between Bill Gates and the Indian Prime Minister on the week of the demonetization? Well, yes we can. In order to do that, let's turn to the blog of the economic journalist Norbert Herring. Washington is behind India's brutal experiment of abolishing most cash.
There was a partnership between US aid and the Indian Finance Ministry and a couple of other institutions who all have an interest in pushing back cash. As they said in a press statement, with an institution called Catalyst, which had exactly that goal, and US aid paid for it. So it's clear that Washington is involved and that US aid is part of an initiative called Better Than Cash Alliance, where they are together with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and the Visa, MasterCard, who have an obvious interest.
But as bad as all of this is, it gets even worse.
Every single individual in India who will have a smartphone will become a walking ATM with this very, very small little instrument which can be put in here on all Android phones. You can do your thumb impression here and transact all Aadhaar-enabled payments as well.
According to Kant, thanks to the wide development of Aadhaar, in the near future all Indians will simply need to use a biometric identifier such as a thumbprint or eye scan to make routine payments. Aadhaar is the 12-digit unique identification number issued by the Indian government to every individual resident of India. The Aadhaar project aims to provide a single, unique identifier which captures all the demographic and biometric details of every Indian resident. Is there any reason to connect this Aadhaar project specifically to this demonetization? And again, the answer is yes. As Herring notes in his article, the director of project incubation for Catalyst is a man named Alok Gupta. He was a member of the original Unique Identification Authority of India team that developed and implemented Aadhaar. So it all comes together, and I hope you're seeing the picture that is coming into view right now. Demonetization, cashless society, biometrics, the total Big Brother surveillance of every transaction going on in the economy, tied down not just to some random details of you, but to your fingerprints and iris scans. You, every single thing that you do, everywhere you go, everyone you interact with being tracked and controlled and databased and surveilled by a central government authority. I would like to think I don't have to elaborate why this is not just a problem for the people of India, although it is obviously that, but this is very soon coming to a country near you.
and confusion at airports today as President Trump's immigration crackdown took effect.
It's capping off a day of confusion, chaos, and protests in several airports across the country.
Effects of President Trump's travel ban continue to sow outrage and chaos at airports across the country.
You had chaos here in LA as well as airports around the country and abroad.
And everywhere you look in the mainstream media right now, it's all about the chaos. And it isn't just the media. Hollywood is getting in on the action too, promoting revolutions, violence, riots, military coups. And Madonna even told a crowd of thousands of protesters that she thought a lot about blowing up the White House.
Yes, I have thought an awful lot about blowing up the White House.
People are openly calling for more police state now, martial law. They want civil war. They're calling for civil war on social media like they actually think that's their original idea they just came up with and not an agenda that everyone has been force-fed and currently are being brainwashed and programmed to fulfill.
Chaos on the campus of UC Berkeley. Conservative free speech sparking an all-out-of-control liberal riot.
If you actually look at some of the video coming out of the Berkeley riots, you'll see a group of people dressed in black with black hoods and black face coverings moving through the crowd, together in a row. This is the crew that provocateured and turned protests that had already been very highly organized and scripted anyways, from a protest to a riot. If people just took off their labels for a minute, their political labels, and stepped away from the identity politics and backed up about 50 feet and took a look at what's actually going on here, you will see how completely orchestrated and manipulated and manufactured this unrest is to cause chaos. Why? Because they want to bring order out of it. This whole thing looks like the next evolution of the same exact agenda that Obama worked so diligently on for the last 8 years. Have you figured out the name of the movie we're watching yet? It's called Divide and Conquer, and it's been in the playbook for a very long time because it tends to work. So right now the agenda is chaos, 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 chaos everywhere. And every time you hear the system toss that word around,
chaos,
chaos, chaos,
chaos,
chaos,
chaos, chaos, chaos, chaos,
chaos,
chaos, chaos.
See it for the manipulation and agenda that it is. It's a program. It's programming to keep us fighting amongst ourselves.
What he's done with his travel ban, really what he's done is just instigated a situation that is going to create chaos. That's what they want to do, is create chaos so that the Supreme Court would have to intervene to stop the chaos and write a court order to override Trump's executive order. And then Trump just kind of sat there and watched to see what the Department of Homeland Security would do. And what the Department of Homeland Security did was they upheld the executive order regardless of what the Supreme Court said. And what he's done is he's tested the waters. He's seen whether the Department of Homeland Security is prepared to override the judicial system if the president says so. And this is a test balloon for a coup d'etat. I mean, this is the way they've played it in every other country. You've got to get control of the judicial system in order to get control of the country. That's the first step. And that's what Trump's just done. He's just tested the waters. He's watched the nation to see whether the nation is willing to capitulate to a fascist regime. And while he's put all these executive orders in place and all this travel ban, he's sacked all of the heads of all the departments in the United States. He's consolidating power, centralizing power. He's giving more powers to the police force, and he's just run a little test to see whether the security forces will support him and have his back if he overrides the judicial system. This is the way they did it in Germany. It's the way they did it in Italy, in Spain, in Panama, anywhere you can think of. This is the way a coup d'etat is run, and they always test the waters a little bit first. Look deeper below the lines here. It's not about It's not about a Muslim ban. It was never about a Muslim ban. It's about getting the DHS to override the judicial system. That was the test. And it's really dangerous. People need to step back and look at what this man is actually doing. And he's got so much of the truth movement just hoodwinked and blindly following him, thinking that he's going to lead them to safety. And he's not. He's taking their rights away at every moment. He's giving the police more and more powers. Everyone's going to be happy, and they're going to be fine with the police brutality because it's against the immigrants, you know. So you create these minority groups, you know, get the people upset about Muslims, upset about immigrants, upset about blacks or whatever, you know, all these pesky immigrants that keep coming here and stealing our jobs, get them out of the country. The people will all go for it, you know, and Trump he'll make more roads, he'll get the life really comfortable, get everybody with a higher employment, you know, get everyone with more wages, you've got a better TV, you've got a better car, you've got nice roads. They're all going to be quite happy and comfortable at home. And once he gets the people comfortable enough, they're all going to say, oh, gee, Trump's great, look what he's done for America. And he's just going to go out and stomp on the world.
And then we attacked Afghanistan. I was pretty happy about that. We should have. And then I came back to the Pentagon about 6 weeks later. I saw the same officer. I said, why haven't we attacked Iraq? We still going to attack Iraq? He said, oh, sir. He says, it's worse than that. He said, I just got this memo from the Secretary of Defense's office that says we're going to attack and destroy the governments in 7 countries in 5 years. We're going to start with Iraq, and then we're going to move to Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Iran.
If Trump starts a trade war, this will lead into a world war. And he might not have support of America's allies, because China is the #1 trading partner for Japan, Australia, South Korea, Vietnam, and India. And over the past year, a number of countries like Thailand, Malaysia, Philippines, well, they've been moving away from Washington and closer with China. So we can see right now, the elite, they are causing chaos in the region, and they're going to play upon Trump's weaknesses. We don't know exactly what he's going to do. All he did was roll back some executive orders that Obama put forth. But we can see that he's a little hot-headed when it comes to Iran and China, and he could start a war. We see in Ukraine, things are getting out of hand. And we can see that at this point, with the economy failing, all of this can happen at once. And we're coming to the point where things are rapidly heating up. You can see it now all around the world. And we can see that the elite, the central banks, they're prepared and ready to create chaos. to bring the world to war to restart their system.
It's Middle East and Asia, where the United States wants to have control of natural resources, or at least partnerships with other nations. And right now there's disputes, not just specific about islands, but who's going to control oil reserves that they have discovered under the South China Sea. Now, so that's a major aspect of it. And I have not heard Donald Trump or hardly anybody speak about the Asia-Pacific region. In the campaigns, it was basically silent about militarization aspects of Asia. So you could not find that in debates, in the presidential candidates' speeches, or anyone questioning in the news conferences any of the presidential candidates. So it's basically as if Asia did not exist. Mm-hmm. And now it's on the map, but nothing about the militarization aspect of it, because we are now armed to the teeth in Asia-Pacific on the brink of war. There's island disputes between China and Japan, Russia and Japan, but more than anything, I think there's a powder keg with Indonesia. It's the largest Muslim population in the world, and they're experiencing, even though you don't see it on most of the news media, Islamic fundamental terrorism, and that's right along the shipping lanes. That could trigger it off. But more importantly, and this is very little known by the American public, the Obama administration assisted Japan, namely Prime Minister Shinzo Abe and the Japanese Diet, to change Article 9 in the Constitution, which prohibited offensive military capability. That was changed a year ago.
Wow.
Now, Japan could strike first. Mm-hmm. There's a new military alliance with Japan, which says that we have to go to war with them. They have to go to war with us. That is extremely dangerous.
Gender Mainstreaming. Abgeleitet aus dem englischen Wort Gender, zu Deutsch Geschlecht, definiert dieser längst nicht unumstrittene Zweig der Sozialwissenschaft ein soziales Geschlecht, das offenbar zunehmend an die Stelle des biologischen Geschlechtes treten soll.
Also das heißt, das biologische Geschlecht, so wie wir mit unseren Genitalien auf die Welt kommen, aber das sei nicht das richtige Geschlecht, sondern es gäbe dieses soziale Geschlecht, also das Geschlecht, was daraus entsteht, dass man mit seiner Umwelt, mit der Gesellschaft interagiert. Da geht es jetzt beim Gender Mainstreaming darum, nicht was viele denken, wenn sie das Wort hören, Gleichberechtigung herzustellen zwischen verschiedenen sexuellen Orientierungen, sondern da geht es wirklich darum, dass diese Unterschiede zwischen Mann und Frau, die ja nur sozial konstruiert sind, nach dieser Theorie, völlig abzuschaffen und einen einheitlichen, ich nenne ihn mal Gender-Menschen, herzustellen.
Was das heißt, zeigt sich zum Beispiel auf Facebook, wo Nutzer mittlerweile zwischen sage und schreibe 60 verschiedenen Geschlechtern wählen können. Obwohl sich nur eine verschwindend kleine Minderheit der Bevölkerung zu einem dieser angeblichen Geschlechter bekennen dürfte, soll genau das nun zum Lehrinhalt an Niedersachsens Schulen werden. Und zwar nicht etwa als Zusatz zum klassischen Sexualkundeunterricht, sondern fächerübergreifend als übergeordnetes Bildungsziel. Und zwar schon ab dem Vorschulalter.
Es geht darum, dass hier Ideologie vermittelt werden soll. Und dafür gibt es nur ein einziges Wort. Und dieses Wort ist Indoktrination. Und das kann und darf einfach nicht Bestandteil des Lehrunterrichts sein.
Die Biologie spielt keine Rolle mehr bei der Schaffung des vermeintlich perfekten Menschen. Genau das ist der anmaßende Kern der Gender-Ideologie.
Es gibt da Aussprüche von bekannten Sozialisten, die sagen, die Natur des Menschen ist es, keine zu haben. Er kommt nach dieser Vorstellung, nach dieser Ideologie als ein weißes Blatt Papier auf die Welt und das kann man jetzt beliebig beschreiben. Das heißt, auch in dieser ganzen sexuellen Erziehung, in dem ganzen Erziehungssystem, das man davor hat, nimmt man auf die menschliche Natur überhaupt keine Rücksicht, weil er ja nach dieser Ideologie keine hat. Ich kann also aus dem Menschen letzten Endes machen, was ich will. Das heißt, die Voraussetzung, um diesen neuen Menschen zu schaffen, heißt im Grunde die gesamte vorhandene Kultur zu zerstören und auf dieser Tabula rasa dann einen neuen Menschen zu schaffen.
Schließlich konstruiert die Gender-Ideologie eine Vielzahl neuer Geschlechter, die sich einzig und allein aus den sexuellen Vorlieben eines Individuums ableiten. Dementsprechend wollen Gender-Ideologen Kindern möglichst frühzeitig verschiedenste Sexualpraktiken vermitteln. Denn nur so können sich ihrer Anschauung nach die sozialen Geschlechter, die neuen Identitäten, frei entfalten.
Standards für Sexualaufklärung in Europa. Und da heißt es Aufklärung nach Altersgruppen. Das steht in allen Gesetzen drin, dass die Sexualaufklärung altersgemäß sein muss. So, wie stellt man sich das jetzt hier vor? Selbstbefriedigung 0 bis 4 Jahre. Homosexualität 4 bis 6 Jahre. Empfängnisverhütung 6 bis 9 Jahre. Genderorientierung 9 bis 12 und Sex dann 12 bis 15 Jahre. Das ist die Vorstellung, wie eine altersgemäße Sexualerziehung bei Kindern aussehen sollte. Es wird im Grunde ein seelisch verkrüppelter Mensch, der kein Selbstbewusstsein mehr hat, der bindungsunfähig ist und damit auch letzten Endes unfähig, eine Familie zu gründen.
Und hier schließt sich der Kreis. Denn das ist kein Nebeneffekt, sondern das Ziel der Gender-Ideologie. Die Abschaffung traditioneller Lebensweisen und damit zuvorderst die Abschaffung der Familie.
Bei Gender wird eben sehr wenig offen gesagt, weil die meisten Sachen schlicht und einfach öffentlich gar nicht durchzubringen wären. Und es fällt auf, dass die ganze Einführung dieser ganzen Gender-Ideologie oder die Durchsetzung von Gender Mainstreaming immer top-down geht, von der UNO über die EU, über die Länder, Landesregierung und so weiter in ganz Europa. Und zwar ohne dass jemals irgendein parlamentarisches Gremium dazu befragt oder informiert worden wäre. Das wurde per Kabinettsbeschluss in Deutschland eingeführt. Man muss sich überlegen, das ist eine Ideologie, die unsere gesamte Gesellschaft verändern soll. Ohne jede parlamentarische, demokratische Beteiligung. Anders wäre es gar nicht machbar, denn wenn man den Menschen erzählen würde, was wir hier tun wollen, was Gender eigentlich möchte, die hätten keine 3% Zustimmung in Europa.
das ist eine Ideologie, die Fuß fasst. Ich habe nicht das Gefühl, dass sie so einfach dahergeschlendert kommt und Fuß fasst, sondern dass sie im Gegenteil, gerade weil, wie du ja auch schon gesagt hast, es einem erstmal so abstrus vorkommt, dass sie eigentlich an unserem Bewusstsein geschickt vorbeigeschleust wird und erst jetzt, wo sämtliche legislativen Weichen eigentlich schon eindeutig gestellt sind, kommt sozusagen die Phase der Medienkampagne. Und das Ziel dabei ist eben, dass die Unterschiede zwischen den Geschlechtern, soweit überhaupt noch vorhanden, eben so hingestellt werden, dass im Grunde männlich und weiblich wie zwei Extrempunkte eines Kontinuums sind. Und im Wesentlichen es davon abhängt, wie jemand sozialisiert wird, ob er sich mehr männlich oder mehr weiblich fühlt. Das ist sozusagen ja das Ziel des Gender-Mainstreamings. Hinterher ist auch beim Gender-Mainstreaming, wie bei so vielen anderen politischen Bereichen, die Auflösung der Familie mit angesagt. In Schweden ist es bereits jetzt eben dann so, dass nicht mehr von Vater und Mutter gesprochen wird, sondern es soll eben dann so jetzt allgemeiner Sprachgebrauch werden, von Älter 1 und Älter 2 zu sprechen, auch damit die gleichgeschlechtlichen Elternpaare nicht diskriminiert werden. Das Geschlechtliche ist aber ja eigentlich eine körperliche Gegebenheit, die bis auf ganz, ganz wenige Ausnahmen von Zwittergeburten wirklich eindeutig ist, sodass man das Gefühl hat, das, was eigentlich sozusagen das Kraftspendende ist, ist ja die grundlegende Kraft im Universum, davon sollen wir möglichst abgelenkt werden. Und wenn man weiß, dass eben sämtliche geistigen Techniken, Yogi-Techniken und so, alle damit beschäftigt sind, mit dieser Kraft zu arbeiten, dass also diese sexuelle Kraft im Grunde das ist, was uns unserer Allmacht bewusst werden lässt, die wir eigentlich haben, dann ist auch klar, dass man uns so weit wie möglich davon ablenken will, eine wirklich erfüllende und befriedigende und stillende und nährende Sexualität zu leben, sondern dass wir uns möglichst verzetteln in allen möglichen Praktiken und immer da dann das Heil suchen. Alles, was mit der ursprünglichen biologischen Form von Fortpflanzung und familiären Strukturen zu tun hat, wird im Grunde aufgeweicht, aufgelöst, verächtlich gemacht. Das sieht für mich so aus, als ob es genau in die Richtung gehen sollte, die Familien eben ganz aufzulösen, Älter 1, Älter 2, und dann kann man die Kinder doch auch im Grunde gleich dem Staat. Genau, ganz dem Staat, und dann hat man erfolgreich die Menschen auf Ameisenstatus eigentlich reduziert. Ja.
If we're going to be streetwise, we need to ask ourselves why this whole transgender situation has exploded out of nowhere into the public arena. It's not about protecting people who see themselves in certain sexual ways. Like I say, good luck to them. It's their choice, none of my business. It's about encouraging people to question what they wouldn't normally question, especially young kids. And it's all part of this agenda leading us to this, not a transgender society. This is preparing us mentally, psychologically for the no-gender society, taking us into the whole area of transhumanism, taking us into the whole area of synthetic humans, which in the end, as Aldous Huxley basically was describing in Brave New World, people will not even be born as a result of procreation, but born as a result of what goes on in laboratories. They want to bring that in a lot quicker than people would even begin to imagine.
the end of the Bible, we find the descriptions of the prophet Ezekiel. He was a high priest in Jerusalem, and at his time, Jerusalem was captured by the Babylonians. So Ezekiel was one of the slaves working for the Babylonians outside in the desert. And of a sudden, the heavens opened, and all the slaves saw an object coming down. And Ezekiel, in the beginning, he believes that must be God, the Almighty God. So he fell down on his knees, and then he realized this is not God. And he starts to describe what he sees. In front of his eyes stands a gigantic chariot with a light, a glittering of light. He describes the wheels. He says the wheels can go in every direction, forward and backward, right and left, without turning itself. You see, in the Bible, for example, shortly there is mentioned the man with the name of Enoch. And in the Bible you only read that Enoch was a prophet before the great flood, and Enoch was the first human who disappeared in a fiery chariot. Then, nearly 200 years ago, an Englishman was in Ethiopia, and there in the old library he found a book called the Book of Enoch. And the prophet Enoch clearly says he was 12 years old when something descended from the sky, again with loud noise. The whole community of the village were afraid and ran away, but the 12-year-old Enoch was standing there. And then two people came close to him. At least they looked like people, but they had glittering suits on, and they had helmets. So these two strangers say to Enoch, to the boy, "If you wish, we will take you up over the sky, over the earth, and we will show you your planet from above." And the 12-year-old one says, "Yes, I wish to do so." So these three people, two strangers and Enoch, they make a few steps away. And one of the strangers says to Enoch, "Human, you smell terribly. You stink." So the human had to push himself into the water. Then he comes out of the water. They give him a cream. He should put this cream over his whole body. And later they give him some sort of suit, the same suit which they were on. And he was looking glittering like the others. Then they go up. Of course, Enoch has no technological words. He cannot explain what it was. He has no word like space shuttle or mother spaceship. He simply explains, "When I was up there, I wish to fall down to the earth. So if someone wishes to fall down to the earth, he cannot be on earth." Then he said, the high place on which we stood always turned up and turned down. Of a sudden, I saw our Earth, the planet Earth, up, and I saw the stars down. Now soon as you are in a mother spaceship, which surrounds the Earth in an orbit, this mothership itself would turn around its own axis. By turning around its own axis, you create an artificial gravity by the centrifugal force. So it's a must to turn a spaceship around its own axis. Now, all these things are scientific information. It's not just a wish or a dream. The informations are too precise. And the universe is endless, and there are thousands, billions forms of life. Well, I had the chance to come together with brilliant people. And some of these brilliant men, they told me they know that there are extraterrestrials. For example, Ed Mitchell. Ed Mitchell, it was an American astronaut. He was the 6th man on the moon. And he told me, "Eric, I was officially informed that extraterrestrials do exist. Every time before we leave," and the same happens with other astronauts, including the Russian astronauts, every time before we leave, we receive a briefing. And some of the scientists tells us, astronauts, "Listen, you will probably see during your flight some things out there which you could not believe before that they do exist. Now you are not allowed to speak in your radio, you know, with the Earth, that you have seen UFOs or extraterrestrials." So, and there are other people who really, Professor Dr. Carl Sagan. Sagan was a Harvard professor, a brilliant man, and he was all in the beginning against this UFO stuff. And he said, "Eric, we are just one of the species of thousands of species which exist around us. We have just separated ourselves. Sooner or later, we will make contact with them again. It's all a question of slowly developing, because if we, from one day to the other, our scientific community or our politics would go on television and say, hey, we have contact with extraterrestrials, they are here, they are observing us, humanity would be shocked, completely shocked, because the scientists, which are the serious people, told us extraterrestrials do not exist. And if they exist, we will never come together because the distances between the stars are much too big. So what the scientific community told us was only partly true, and a big part of it is wrong. So we are shocked. We have to learn slowly, step by step, that we are not alone.
in the same boat in that the tools that we use, our computer, our phone, and so on, are also devised to interrupt us, to seduce us, to draw our attention from this to that. I think we've entered a time when we're in danger of intentional impoverishment. And the signs of it are more than, a couple looking at their phone instead of into each other's eyes. The other day I saw a mom holding a little toddler, and the toddler's trying to get her attention, and she's busy texting. She's just not available. And, of course, dad's the same story. And I think this is a real loss. When you have too much to do, too little time, too little support, when you feel overwhelmed, it's constant stress. And here the problem is you can't stop thinking about what's upsetting you, what's stressing you. You're not focusing here. You're not focusing on the task at hand. You're focusing on what's upsetting you, and that's the power of emotions. Emotions take over attention. They guide attention. I was in a classroom of 7-year-olds in Spanish Harlem in Manhattan. Spanish Harlem is a very impoverished place. Every day, this classroom, all the kids have a session where they go to their little cubbies and they get a favorite stuffed animal and they lie it down on a rug on the floor. They put the animal on their belly and they watch it go up with the in-breath and down when they breathe out. And they count 1, 2, 3 on the in-breath, 1, 2, 3 on the out-breath. They're strengthening the capacity, the mental muscle of attention. There's something else, there's a twofer here, because the same circuitry also calms stormy emotions. The ability to manage emotions is inextricably linked with the ability to pay attention. And the teacher said, one day because of a scheduling problem, we had to skip this, and the class was chaotic. The class was chaotic. Social emotional learning takes the emotional intelligence components, self-awareness, managing your inner life, empathy, handling relationships, and makes it part of the curriculum. Not in a way that takes away from academics, but in a way that enhances children's ability to handle themselves and their relationships. One of the things they do in these classes, in these programs, I've seen this in New Haven in a neighborhood very similar to Spanish Harlem. There's a poster on the wall of every classroom. It's a stoplight, a traffic light, red light, yellow light, green light. It says, when you're upset, remember the stoplight. Red light, stop, calm down, and think before you act. Well, stop says you have a choice. Calm down means you can manage your inner turmoil. Think before you act is a very valuable lesson because it says you can't determine what emotions you're going to have. Our emotions come unbidden. But once you have them, you can stop and think what you're going to do. In fact, one definition of maturity is lengthening the gap between impulse and action. Yellow light, think of a range of things you could do and what the consequences might be. Green light, pick the best one and try it out. Our emotions are contagious, for better or for worse, particularly when we pay full attention to each other. I once was waiting for a bus on a very hot, humid day in New York City in August. It's the kind of day, I don't know about London, but in New York we have a rather invisible balloon around us. We're feeling a little prickly. It says, don't talk to me, don't touch me. I had my balloon intact and the bus pulls up, get on with my balloon, and the bus driver did something quite surprising. He actually spoke to me. He said, how's your day been? I was shocked, but I sat down, taking most of my bubble with me. Then I realized this bus driver is carrying on a conversation with everyone on the bus. And then people would get off the bus and he'd say to them, I hope the rest of your day is really wonderful. That man was an urban saint. He transformed everyone on the bus. He was sending ripples of good feeling through a city that sorely needed it. And I think the bottom line is, you don't have to go to the Himalayas for decades. We all can do that in our lives if we pay attention.